and we have got Alice from Alice Talks Football to come on. Alice, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. I mean, just Man United's a bit depressing to watch at the moment, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, we're all depressed, Alice.
Yeah, exactly. We can all be depressed together, Alice. I mean, last time you came on the show, we were talking about Ange Postecoglou and Eric Ten Hag, and you were saying that you wouldn't take Ange Postecoglou over Eric Ten Hag. Now Ten Hag has gone. You've got Ruben Amorim at the helm. I mean, me and Sim were just having a conversation about Amorim, and if he finishes 17th, do you think he'll get sacked? I mean, I was making the argument that he just needs his players through the door. Are you kind of a similar thinking?
Yeah, I think the only way to get sacked is if like relegation was possible. I think it is just, try and finish as high as you can in the league. But I think the way we're seeing it, United fans, is if we finish 13th, but we can win either FA Cup and get in Europa or Europa League and get in the Champions League, we're just looking at it as a perspective of don't get relegated and win a trophy. And I think Ruben Amorim is thinking a bit more of a long-term process of them learning his system, learning which players can do his system and can't do his system, and more get there in the summer. I think it's a long process, but unless we got relegated, I don't think he's going anywhere because we haven't got wing backs, we haven't got anyone that can play a system because it's so different to Ten Hag.
Yeah, in terms of how you assess so far his time in charge, I think we can all agree he's had a massive job and a lot of difficulties, as you say, with the lack of maybe players that does fit a system. But how do you personally assess how he's been getting on? Do you have any criticism of him? Do you feel like it's hard to criticise him right now?
Yeah, I think he's getting things wrong, and I think you can criticise the manager without thinking that he's the problem, if you know what I mean. Like, obviously, Amorim, I'm backing him over the players, the board. Like, they need to get recruitment right. These aren't his players. And to be honest, I always felt last season we overachieved with Ten Hag. Even finishing 8th, the underlying numbers had United about 14th, 15th. And this is Amorim taking over a squad that could have finished easily 13th last season. We're 13th in the league. Like, we've not improved since Amorim's come in. And I think there was some people that thought just sacking Ten Hag would save the problems, but that wasn't the case. It would solve the problems, but that wasn't the case. We've not really improved much. Like, the football is quite boring. Going forward is pretty poor. Then we've lost Rashford and Anthony, and we haven't replaced them. But there's things about Amorim's system that I look at and I'm like, okay, there's an out of possession structure there. You can actually see what he's trying to do, but you can just see we don't have the players to do that. We don't have players that can carry the ball forward. We don't have players that can use their brain in the final third. I think it's a sort of, you can see bits of it, but it's just not there.
Yeah, we were just looking at the form before and we were quite surprised. You've won 4 of the last 5 games. You've only conceded 2 goals. So how do you think there is signs of improvement, maybe defensively, or do you think maybe, is it luck? You're just getting some luck in games? Like, how do you assess your recent form?
It's difficult because I think, defensively we probably have improved. The one thing I've noticed is Arsenal and Liverpool, the big games, but in those big games, we're not getting rolled over. Under Ten Hag, we lost 3-0 to Tottenham, 3-0 to Liverpool. We had the big 7-0 loss to Liverpool, whereas Amorim, we had the 2-2 to Liverpool, and we knocked Arsenal out of the FA Cup with 10 men. So in the bigger games where we don't have much of the ball, we're set up a lot better out of possession off the ball. But the minute we're required to do something on the ball, that's when it's poor. Like, even the Southampton win, we weren't great. Amad Diallo scored a 12-minute hat-trick. The win versus Fulham was a deflection. It's the only convincing win we've had for me is really Everton. Like, we've had moments in games, but that's good. But why were we only good for the last 20 minutes? What did we do the first 70 minutes? I think just going forward, confidence is probably a part of it. But I think we just lack that quality in the final third.
In terms of Ruben Amorim and bringing him when you did bring him in, do you think it was a mistake in that aspect? Because essentially, in my opinion, you're basically saying, well, this season's pretty much done. You don't have the players to implement his system. Do you think it would have been smarter just to bring him in the summer, or maybe even last summer you probably should have brought him in just so you can get players to suit his system? But right now, you literally don't have many players that can suit his system. So do you think in hindsight it was a bit of a mistake to pivot to him midway through the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we should have brought him in the summer. They wanted Thomas Tuchel, and then something went wrong with Thomas Tuchel at the end, so they just panicked and stuck with Ten Hag. And it was like, well, you never really wanted Ten Hag. You might as well have brought Amorim in that summer, backed him, spent the money, because I feel like there was a feeling everyone thought deep down that Ten Hag might go this third season because everyone kind of knew that Ineos probably were reluctant to keep him. And Dan Ashworth lost his job ultimately because he was sort of questioning the decision of, do we sack Ten Hag this early on when we kept him in the summer and we spent all this money? And he wasn't that pro bringing Ruben Amorim in. I think bringing Ruben Amorim in is probably the right decision long term. but it was one that it should have been done in the summer. And I think the thing is, I look at it and I think, had Ten Hag stayed and had Ruud van Nistelrooy been interim, maybe we finish higher in the Premier League this season, just because they would have adjusted the tactics to suit the players. Whereas Ruben Amorim is saying, I'm going to play my football. I'm not going to adjust the tactics to suit the players, because this time next year will be better off for it. He believes if he does his system now and he learns which players can and can't do it, next season he'll know sort of who can, who can't, we're better off for it, rather than trying to implement his tactics next season. We could be where we are now next season if he tries to implement it. So maybe having Amorim here to do a bit of trial error and learn the squad is all right. But I think ultimately it probably would have been maybe better in the summer. But I think, like, I'm happy he's here. But yeah, just so he can learn the system. But I think it is, the season's a write-off essentially. It's just trying to save it with an FA Cup or not Carabao, Europa.
Yeah, I mean,
and Alice, I know you've been accused of being a Spurs fan by some people, but you're starting to sound like a Spurs fan with that assessment, because that's what a lot of people used to say about Ange Postecoglou. What you've been saying about, just allowing him to just maintain the system and seeing who can do and who can't. It's a lot of what we were saying last year. Obviously, you've been quite a big defender of Ange throughout the season. We're now, obviously, Spurs are sitting in 14th. We're not, obviously, a lot of fans are not happy. We have this injury crisis which seems to be easing just in time to play you guys, which is great. But what has your opinion changed on the Ange project and him as a manager over the course of how this season has gone? Or do you still believe that Tottenham should be keeping him on and he still could be a good long-term fit for Tottenham?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a long-term project, but I think because the results and performances have been so bad lately, I think if they sack Ange, you can't argue it's the wrong decision. But I do look at it and I think you sack Ange right now with the squad you've got, with the players you've got available, bringing in a new manager, I don't think you get better for it, because you actually look at the players available. And even if Ange has got things wrong, and even if you're playing badly, I don't think sacking Ange right now makes Tottenham miraculously better. So for me, I've always said with Ange Postecoglou, there is a project at Tottenham. There's Burville, there's Gray, there's Moore, there's Vuskovic coming in. You've got all these young players, Sar's young, Van der Ven's young. And when everybody's fit, you see Ange ball. You had a little bit of a period at the beginning of this season where I think you might have won 8 out of 11 games or something. You had a really good start last season. And when everyone's fit, you see Ange ball. Then Mickey Van der Ven gets injured, then everybody else gets injured, and then Tottenham fall off a cliff a bit. And I think Ange definitely deserves criticism. I think he's got things wrong. But I think with the injuries, and I think with the bigger problem at Tottenham being Daniel Levy and those above Ange, it was a similar situation to where we were with Eric Ten Hag last season. Money had been spent on Ten Hag, but he had a lot of injuries, and every manager at United in recent years have failed. And the one consistency was the people above the manager. And I think Tottenham are in a similar position where actually he showed elements when everyone was fit of some good football. There's a young squad that should get better, and that the bigger problem lies above Ange. Now, if you get to a position in summer where, it's really bad, a couple of players come back from injury, and you only just avoid relegation, and Iraola's saying, I want the Tottenham job, it's a different conversation then. But I think right now, no one's probably going to come to Tottenham right now that would be an improvement on Ange. And I think give him to the summer and probably assess in the summer, because I think there's an argument to sack him because it is really bad. But ultimately, I don't think it solves your problems. And I think his project could work given time. I actually believe it could.
Do you subscribe to the notion about the injuries? Because a lot of people, including himself, is using the excuse of, we've got so many injuries, we just can't maneuver this situation. Do you believe that he has any input with the way he plays, the way he trains? How much input do you reckon he's had on the injury crisis that we're going through right now?
Yeah, I think there's an element of input, but it's one of those things where a little bit of luck, a little bit of it is just having injury-prone players. And I've always said this with injuries. When one player gets injured, it's almost a trigger effect for more injuries. Like we had it at United, because Malacia was out for 18 months injured. The minute Luke Shaw was fit, we have to throw him back in the squad, so then he would be injured, and he spent the whole season injured. And the minute Lissandro Martinez got fit last season, we threw him in the squad and he got injured again. And I think you might have that with Mickey Van der Ven, because Romero's not fit, because you lack at the back, you throw Mickey Van der Ven in, he's injured again. I think there's an element of when you've got 1 or 2 injuries, it means all of a sudden you can't rest Pedro Porro, so he'll either drop off in form or get injured. You can't rest, Udogie at one point because he wouldn't play Spence originally, and then obviously Udogie got injured. He is playing Spence, so it's like the players that are fit have to play every game, so they're more chance of getting injured. So that's not on Ange, but I think because you do play the most intense football and all the sprints, I think naturally if a player's got hamstring issues and is an injury-prone player, it's more likely to trigger it. But I think a lot of it is to do with having injury-prone players.
Alice, they are dubbing Sunday El Crapico. They are saying that it's the battle of two really out-of-form teams. So how do you think it's going to go? And are we going to expect any surprises, do you think, from Amorim when it comes to team selection?
Ooh, for me, this is the hardest game to predict of the season because you don't know what Man United will show up and you don't know what Tottenham Hotspur will show up. It could be a 4-4 draw, it could be a 0-0 ball, it could be Tottenham batter us, we could batter you. You don't know what's going to happen. In terms of team selection, I mean, Dorgu coming in, maybe we actually play him left wing back and have some kind of threat on the wing back positions. But I mean, I think Amorim's, he played Maino at striker versus Brighton, I think it was, or Palace, sorry. Maybe he's going to throw some things about and try something different. But I think it will probably be, let's just try and get Ahmad on the ball and try and test the Tottenham defence. I think that will be the tactic, to be honest.
Yeah. So how do you see the game going? What's your score prediction?
I'm going to say 2-2 for now, but this for me is the hardest game to predict of the season because I think Tottenham are very unpredictable and Man United are very unpredictable. And sometimes we can put in a performance and sometimes you guys can put in a performance and then sometimes we can be crap and sometimes you guys can be crap. So I feel like it balances each other out. We're quite similar right now. I'd probably say 2-2.
Is there a part of you thinking, why do we have to play them just as they're getting a few players back? We've just seen them last lose like 7 in a row, even to the likes of Leicester and Everton. And as soon as we come over into Man United, we seem to have like 4 or 5 players coming back fit. Is there any part of you that could make a difference, do you think?
Yeah, a little bit. It just depends how ready those players are and how ready they are to go and if they're ready to start and stuff. But I think one thing when we lost 3-0 to you guys earlier in the season, obviously you had a lot more players fit, was you just had more intensity than us. You could run more than us, your players. And I think that's something that Ruben Amorim's been struggling with, is their lack of intensity at United. So obviously this Tottenham team has lost that intensity. You were really good at the beginning of the season because you had that intensity because they've had to play every week because you basically only had the same 11 players fit. So they've lost that intensity a bit. So maybe the new signings coming in, if they're ready to go, it would bring that intensity, which I think is why you battered us earlier on in the season.
Yeah, I do feel like the early stages of the game could be really important with the lack of intensity that you're talking about with Tottenham, with a few players coming back. I feel like we could have that initial burst right at the beginning of the game, maybe hopefully get a goal or two, and then maybe, with your lack of maybe attacking prowess at the moment, it could like stand us in good stead. Because I go back to the Chelsea game earlier on this season where we got that initial boost of Romero and Van der Ven being fit and the stadium was buzzing. We went 2-0 up, but then we just kind of weaned out the game. And you're seeing games in recent weeks where we just can't really compete that well in the second half, where in the first half we're looking okay. So do you think that will have a big impact in the game?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it could be one where Tottenham have a good first half and Man United have a good second half. It took us, 70 minutes to get going versus Leicester, but in the last 20, 25 minutes of that game, we were brilliant. I mean, we won because of an offside goal, but we created enough opportunities to win that game. Southampton, we were shocking for 70 minutes. The last 20 minutes, we get going. There is a problem with us and I think intensity and stuff. So potentially if Tottenham run out of steam, it could be one of those where you do go 1-2 up and then we do make it 2-2. I think even was it the Carabao Cup clash, you went a couple of goals ahead and then we caught up and it was quite an equal game, which you just won at the end of it. So it could be a bit of a repeat of that.
Just one prediction off you. I want to know what your thoughts are. Do you think Ange Postecoglou will still be in a job next season, at the first game of next season?
Ooh. It's difficult because I don't know what's going to happen between now and the end of the season, but weirdly, I'm gonna say yes.
Go on, Alice.
I'm gonna say I think he's gonna end the season a bit better than you are now, because I look at your underlying numbers and your goal difference and stuff, and every game you've dropped points in the Premier League, bar like the Liverpool game, you've only lost by like 1 goal. So it's like there's that, whereas you've not been outplayed, it's been that one silly mistake or you've not taken that one chance. So then having a Solanke back and having a Van der Ven and Romero back, if they can come back in, I think because the margins are so narrow in a lot of your losses, weirdly, I think that you probably will finish the season better. But again, if there's a really good manager that said to Daniel Levy he wants the Tottenham job, maybe he goes. But I think he'll probably stay.
Who do you reckon has more chance in the Europa to win the Europa League, Spurs or United?
Weirdly, I'm going to say United because we have experience with trophies. Even when we're shit, we win trophies. Like we won the FA Cup last season, the Carabao the season before. Like the team sort of knows how to win trophies, but I actually think you've got a better record in Europe than us recently. We've been really bad in Europe this season.
Yeah, I mean,
But
we're in
you
the
won the Europa
same
League under Mourinho, though. Yeah.
We're in the same segment for the draw, aren't we? Between Galatasaray, AZ Alkmaar, Sociedad.
So either way, we're going to be an opposite
and
sides.
Midtjylland. So it could be a Spurs Man United final in the
I
Europa
think that'd
League.
be. I would love to see that final. I think that'd be a great final. Both teams desperate to get like European football next season as well.
Yeah. Did you see the results last night? Galatasaray getting absolutely battered 4-1 by Alkmaar. Who do you want in the next round out of those four?
I'd probably say Alkmaar maybe.
Yeah.
Galatasaray, the Turkish teams cause United problems. I don't want a Turkish side and I don't want a Spanish side. They seem to cause us problems.
Yeah. Well, Alice, I want to thank you so much for once again coming on the show. Everyone do go subscribe to Alice Talks Football. And let's see